All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Jellyben Fish Academy. You see this fish right here? He's suffering from a disease called swim bladder disease. You see how the belly has been so much, do I say inflated now? It's actually a bacterial disease. So although this detection is coming a little bit late, his tummy is already getting too big. We are going to see how we can try and rescue his situation. Now, this is a very common disease in catfish farming. Bacteria contribute to about 60% of diseases that infect or affect your catfish. Fungi contribute just to about 9%. Parasites contribute to about 30%, and 1% by other form of pathogens that are yet to be discussed about. So, looking at this fish, in the condition he finds himself, he cannot swim. He has a perforated belly, and I say perforated, he has an inflated tummy, and he finds it difficult to swim. He spends a lot of energy and all that. So the first thing I'm going to do is to first and foremost quarantine him. Don't worry, I'm here for good. Okay, all right, beautiful. Taking him to a separate place. I hope you're not going to jump out of here, because this level of quarantine is not too good. All right, I hope you can see very clearly. The camera is a little bit dull. All right, so straight to the point. Now, this fish, I want to quickly address one or two issues about the health status of this fish. Sorry about the camera actually got water splashed on it, so it was a little bit dull. Now, this fish you see here is actually suffering from what we call dropsy. Now, dropsy is actually a common bacterial disease in catfish. The Greek name of this particular disease is gotten from the word hydrops, or hydrops as the case may be. Now, the hydrops actually is a Greek word derived from hydro meaning water. Now, it's a very common disease you find in catfish, and once your catfish gets in contact with this bacterial disease, most cases they die off. Very few of them end up surviving this kind of disease. If you look at him, he's breathing profusely, and it's a little bit very difficult for him to survive. Now, before I go deep into explaining what this disease is, the symptoms, the causes, the treatment and prevention, I want you to understand that a catfish is designed in such a way that, or fish generally are designed in such a way that they have what we call the swim bladder. Now, the swim bladder is actually an airbag in every fish that enables the fish to sustain in water, to swim, to stand in water, and move with little or no energy involved. If human beings, for example, had swim bladder in them, they will find it very easy to swim, without sinking. But because we have no swim bladder in us, we struggle with dissipate enough energy so that we can swim. But in the realm of fish, it's not the same. They have a swim bladder that makes their work easier for them, and things go well. So it helps maintain buoyancy in water and easy movement without stress. Now, but when this swim bladder is affected by a virus or a bacteria, so to say, not virus, actually bacteria, then you refer to it as dropsy, especially when it now leads to the prolongment of the belly, as you see on the screen. Now, what are actually the symptoms of this kind of disease? Of course, the very most common symptom is, having a protruded abdomen, a big belly as you see, and they float with their tummy facing upward, just as you see on the camera. The tummy is facing upward and big. They find it very difficult to swim at the bottom of the water because of their prolonged and big belly. And then also they refuse to eat food. Their eye at times bulges, and then their fins will clump together, and they breathe profusely. If you look at him, you see how he's breathing with so much strength. Now, what are the causes of this disease, of this particular ailment? Now, this is caused by a bacteria. It's a bacterial disease, called Aeromonas. Aeromonas is actually the bacteria you find in aquatic, aquatic aquariums. Let me use that word. An aquarium is actually a tank, that contains fish and all that. So it is actually an aquatic bacteria they call Aeromonas. Now, aero came from the word air. Monas is actually where they brought it to give it Aeromonas, because it has a way of inflating fluid in the tummy of the fish. As you can see, the belly is big, it is made up of fluids. Now, this disease is caused as a result of stress, also caused as a result of poor water quality, large drop of water temperature. The water temperature can just drop to a very high extent. At the end of the day, the fish are vulnerable. And then also, stress in transportation can cause this kind of disease. When you're transporting the fish from where you bought them to your place, it can cause them, especially when you overstock them and stress them up. And then also, improper feeding can lead to this kind of disease. Aggressive tank mates can also lead to this, because it makes their immune system vulnerable to any bacteria in the tank and gets them infected. Now, what is the treatment procedure? Now, the truth about this kind of disease, which is dropsy, is that there is no absolute treatment to this catfish disease for now. The reason is simply because this particular disease has a bacteria that is so difficult to analyze. It's just like virus, for example. Let's take coronavirus, for example. Ever since the outbreak of corona, since last year, 2019, there is no specific vaccine that has been discovered to cure corona. But however, there are different kinds of immune boosters that you can use to upgrade your immune system to fight against the disease. And that is exactly the case of what we have here. There is no specific vaccine that can prevent them from getting infected of this particular disease, as the case may be. But there are things they can use to prevent them and get themselves out of it. And one of the most common remedy you can use to fight against this is Epsom salt. Yes, Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. The IUPAC nomenclature is magnesium tetraoxosulfate 6. It is a particular salt. It just looks like your table salt, okay? But it's not a table salt. It's a particular salt that contains magnesium, sulfur, and oxygen. The table salt, which is the normal one you use in your kitchen, simply contains sodium and chlorine. That's sodium chloride, So, but that's not what we are using. There's going to be a separate video on that, so that you also learn how it can be useful to treating your catfish, as the case may be. So we are going to use Epsom salt to do this treatment. And how do you administer the treatment? First, you take a teaspoon of Epsom salt and mix it in 1 gallon of water. 1 gallon is about a liter or so. Just use 1 spoon and put it in 1 gallon of water, and then try as much as you can to dissolve it properly until it is fully dissolved. Then you can now put the fish inside and allow it for just 10 minutes. Let it not go beyond 10 minutes. 10 minutes. If it must go beyond 10 minutes, then 5 minutes is okay. That will be 15 minutes maximum. Now, as soon as you're able to do that, you will discover that the water molecules or the fluids that are inside the belly of the fish will now diffuse from the belly of the fish into the water, which contains Epsom salt. In other words, you are raising the temperature of the water so as to diffuse the fluid molecules that are inside the catfish, and then the fish now gets free from it. And that can only happen if you are administering the treatment on time. But failure to have this treatment administered on time, the catfish is likely going to die. Most cases they die off. The reason is simply because as their tummy is getting bigger and bigger, their immune system is getting weaker and weaker. Cells in their body dies all the time. Every minute they keep on dying. As I'm talking to you right now, the cells in this fish are busy dying bit by bit. But the treatment we are going to administer now is going to be a quick therapy, so that we can save the life of this fish and see what comes out of it. And then also, it is important for you to also know the preventive measures. What do you do to avoid this kind of disease in your pond? The very first thing you must learn is to ensure the level of your pond pH to be always at the good level. Don't let it to be too acidic or too alkalinic, as the case may be. It must be at the neutral level. And then number 2, ensure you change your water regularly. Clean your tank regularly. Also, avoid overstocking your fish, because it leads to stress. Avoid overfeeding them, because unfed particles that remain in water end up harming them at the end of the day. So when you have these tips at the tip of your fingers, treating them becomes just a child's play. So for now, we are going to take a preventive measure. And the first preventive measure I'm going to take now, I hope he will not jump out. Calm down, calm down. No, he's going to be very stubborn. All right, I know what to do. Let me take him off the water because that is where he gains his ground. Now, relax. I know he's not going to let me touch him easily. Hey. All right, I hope I got it. Relax, 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 relax. All right, beautiful. Now that I've succeeded in holding him, all I need to do now is to prepare a needle, which I'm going to use to deflate his tummy. And then from there, I will then get the Epsom salt to do that. The reason why I'm using a needle to deflate the tummy is simply because I want it to, leave his body as soon as possible. Let's watch and see that happens. I'm not a veterinary doctor. Please note, I'm not a veterinary doctor. But however, these are the measures I take to, save their lives. Of opening. It may be very painful, but sorry, my dear. All right. So check. Fluid is coming out, the air. The bacteria that is actually preventing the air from coming out. It's like a mucus, Sorry. The air is coming out. Let me not give him another hole so that he will not feel too bad. It's quite a painful procedure. So at this point, I have deflated a good number of air from his body. He's a little bit tired and weak. Sorry, my dear. Sorry, my dear. If you have a good look at him, he's a little bit red. His head is reddish. And the reason for it is because it's part of the symptoms they have when they are infected with such kind of disease. So at this stage, what I'm simply going to do is to get my my Epsom salt ready.